Welcome back. This is the Burnt Canadian channel. I'm the Burnt Canadian, and this is the fourth episode on strata management in British Columbia. I am a licensed strata manager, and in this series, I explain how strata corporations operate for owners and council members. Big thing to note, this is just general information, not legal advice. Let's get into it. Episode 4 is what can strata actually control? So one of the most common frustrations owners have is feeling like strata has too much control over their property. And that is certainly the situation. You buy a piece of property and you kind of think it's yours to do what you want with it. But if it's a strata property, especially if it's actually like a strata corporation that is many units under one roof, then there are a lot of restrictions. Bare land strata is a whole lot less restrictions, and then townhomes less than your, again, many units under one roof is where the most restrictions apply. So many owners say things like, in my unit, I should be able to do whatever I want. That is very true. You really should, but in a strata corporation, to protect everyone's interests, unfortunately, we can't let everyone do that, because then we could have some issues, to put it lightly. When you live in a strata, you're not just owning a unit, you're part of a shared legal structure. And again, you're part of that roof, that building or building envelope, windows, door, or main doors, common area doors, all of that. So the goal of this video is to explain what strata can control, what it can't, and why those limits exist. First, we have shared property. This is a big part of what we're going to talk about today. Strata Corporation is responsible for common property and the collective interest of all owners. So as a strata manager, I have a fiduciary duty to do what's in the best interest of the strata corporation that I'm providing strata management services to. And that very, very closely aligns with that line there for the shared property, where it's a collective interest for all owners, right? So that's what the strata manager does. Does everything in the best interest of the strata corporation, or certainly supposed to. So with that shared property, rules exist to protect the building, protect property values, prevent conflicts between neighbors, although that's always going to happen regardless, depending on who you have and, again, the living situation. The authority comes mainly from Strata Property Act and the regulations, but mainly the act, and then the strata bylaws is the main one to cover most things that owners are going to be concerned about. Resolutions passed by owners is another possibility to change or alter or amend how that control is enforced, or who has what responsibility or authority over property or or property or like finances, stuff like that. But generally, it's going to be property when you're coming to resolutions, or just pulling money from the contingency reserve fund. So category 1 is what strata can control. So common property, like we talked about earlier, is your hallways, elevators, roofs, parquet, exterior walls, the structure, obviously, and the landscaping. Shared amenities like the gym, the pool, maybe you have like a rental room area that people can gather at as well. So those are all going to be controlled by the Strata Corporation and the Strata Council, because it's common property that is there for everyone to use that is an owner of that Strata Corporation or owns a unit in that Strata Corporation. So with all of those items, Strata controls the maintenance, the repairs, and the access. And then for the best interest of all owners, they generally make some kind of rules, or they can make bylaws, but rules for shared amenities is generally the easier and better way to go. It's also a more lenient of a fine when a rule is breached, so it's 50 instead of 200 as the standard numbers for rules and bylaws violations as far as fines goes. Another big thing that Strata controls is building appearance. So Strata can regulate things that affect the appearance of the building. So this is obviously exterior modifications, which owners aren't going to be doing for the most part anyway. They're not too worried about what the exterior wall looks like. They might, but again, if you're one unit under many different roofs, then you're not going to roofs or one unit or many units under one roof, then you're not going to be worried about that as much. Balcony changes is something that the Strata Corporation can regulate for sure. Window coverings is a big one. So if you think about it, if everyone had different wild color window shades or blinds, then it wouldn't look too aesthetically pleasing from the outside of the building. So that's why there's kind of regulations around that. One property that comes to mind, it's kind of just from beige to light white color. I can't remember exactly. Off-white to beige is the options that you kind of have, or the color palette variety that you have to choose from. And again, that's to protect the aesthetic appearance of the building from the exterior. Obviously, exterior paint. If you wanted to install a satellite dish, that's going to require council approval or Strata Corporation or Strata Council approval for you to be permitted to do so. And then air conditioning units, again, definitely, because you're penetrating the envelope of the building, which is not just for your interest, so it's the interest of all owners. So the Strata Council has to make sure that you are doing this properly with proper permits, with proper vendors that know what they're doing and can do it without causing a leak or other problems to the building after you've penetrated the building envelope. We kind of covered many of the reasons, but this is to consistency again for windows and balconies and the paint in general. Paint really is that's a good one to bring up for townhomes. So regardless, it might be your townhome sitting by itself in a row of different townhomes. But again, to protect the aesthetic visual appearance of the entire Strata Corporation, the exterior paint color palette certainly needs to be controlled, or some kind of theme or scheme control there to ensure the aesthetics of the entire property. Because again, the big thing that I'm going to continue to touch on here is, and it actually goes into my next point here, property values. So if someone has painted their house, I don't know, whatever color, some color, pink, super bright white or bright pink, that might bring down the value of the houses beside them, or most likely will. At the end of the day, I'm not going to buy my house beside the bright pink house if I can buy a very similar house that's not beside the pink house. So that's where this control, or the reason for this control, comes in right there. Is you can actually change the potential value of properties beside you by your decisions and what you do on the exterior of the building, which is why it's controlled by the Strata Corporation. Don't get me wrong, I wish you could do whatever you want, but there's a shared interest in the Strata Corporation, and it has to, my fiduciary duty is to protect the interest of all owners and to do what's best for the interests of all owners. And then another big one is structural safety. So this goes back to proper vendors and getting permits. So whatever you're doing is done properly and doesn't cause problems down the road or immediately. Bylaw enforcement is a big one Strata can control. So they are going to deal with noise complaints, smoking rules, pet restrictions, short-term rentals, which is a different, or a new legislation recently about that. Not recently, but within the last 2 years. Parking rules and storage rules are other big ones there. The main one that Strata councils are going to enforce as far as bylaws is generally your noise complaint. Smoking will come as a big issue for some, and then pet restrictions might be a big problem for some. Short-term rentals, depends where you are. It might be pretty obvious what the situation is at that point, but there is no, depending on the property, if you are in a property that is still 55 plus, it still has some long-term or rental restrictions, but other than that, rental restrictions are generally not enforceable. But don't take my word for it. Definitely look into your specific matter, or comment on this video and ask me your questions directly, and I will try my best to answer them. Parking rules and storage rules are another good 2 ones there. So whatever parking lot or spot you have, that's probably what you're going to have to go with or deal with, unless you can find another owner that can switch, but that might even not be possible through the Strata Corporation, because again, they need to know who's parking where and all of that, with what vehicle as well, stuff like that. And then storage rules, this is a big one, just I almost said common sense, but for some that doesn't always apply, and I'm trying to say that as a nice way possible. But so some people will store things that really shouldn't be stored in storage lockers or storage units, flammable option or flammable things, volatile things, corrosive things, stuff like that. Big one that comes to mind for me is EV, like electric devices, like scooters, bikes, flywheels, whatever the electric moving motion device that the kids are using. Those aren't always built with the best batteries, depending on your manufacturer, which can certainly cause some concerns as well. Explain. Yeah, basically, so as far as enforcing the bylaws, generally the council is going to receive a complaint. They will write a notice to the owner about the complaint and explain the details of the complaint and what bylaws it violates and what the next steps are going to be. Generally, those next steps are for the owner to have the opportunity to respond. It could just be a bylaw violation warning, which then at that point the owner just needs to read it, understand what's happened, and change the behavior so it doesn't continue. So the bylaw doesn't continue getting violated. But if it is like a bylaw violation with the intent to fine, or mainly just if intent to fine, then you're going to want to provide a response to maybe attempt to avoid the fine. Otherwise, you may also request a hearing. And then if you request a hearing, the council has to do it within 28 days of the hearing request. So do keep them on that one as well. Make sure that you get your hearing with it within 28 days if you've requested it. Unless you're okay with maybe the council has a meeting in like 35 days or 42 days, something like that, then at that point maybe show some flexibility and allow it to be a little bit further out. But at that point, that means that they're not going to move on their fine until they hear you out, right? So at least at that point, you've prolonged or postponed the fine until you have your hearing. So pro for you at that point. And then obviously after the council's received your response or had your hearing, they have to provide you a response as far as what they're going to do next, which is either, okay, we accept your response and appreciate your apology, please don't let it happen again, or thank you for coming to the hearing. A lot of the information you presented changes our opinion on it, and we're just going to leave this as a warning. And or you get, hey, thank you for your information. We're still going to move forward with the fine for these reasons, or maybe not even reasons, we're still just going to move forward with the fine. And then for the hearing, again, so hearing has another regulation. Once the hearing's happened, the council needs to give the hearing written response within 7 days, or a written decision on what they're going to do, and that's regarding the fine and enforcement. So likely it's either, hey, we're not going to fine, or yes, we're going to proceed with the fine, and maybe even provide some reasons or touch on what was discussed during the hearing. But this is a pretty good legal process. It certainly makes sure that everyone gets their opportunity and nothing's done out of the anger or just frustration or something like that. So safety in building systems is the big one that the strata can regulate or control, and examples of this would be your building work, structural changes, electrical modifications, and renovation approvals. And the last one is definitely a big one, and we will touch on that soon. So the big reason that strata controls those things is to prevent damage to other units. If you're doing plumbing work and you're not doing it properly or with a proper licensed plumber, or maybe you didn't let the strata know and you should have had the water turned off, and now you've got water running through the whole building. Now that's the reason that they don't allow that, and that why you need approval for plumbing work or renovation approvals and stuff like that. Insurance claims, obviously, if that large amount of water happened to go in then or come out of whatever pipe you're working on, then it might cause a insurance claim for water damage, and we're trying to prevent that always, because otherwise insurance premiums are going to go up generally, and that just means an increase to strata fees. Oh my goodness, give me 2 seconds, I forgot to get water again. Apologies. Sorry about that. So category 2, what the strata can. Oh, sorry. So we didn't actually touch on it that much. Renovation approvals. This is the big one. A lot of the owners, going back to what I talked about earlier. A lot of owners seem to, or they, well, and just rightfully so, you should be able to do whatever you want in your unit, but some of those things still require approval from the owner. So again, if you are a unit within, I actually specialize in strata hotels, so strata properties that are on resorts that are owned by, the units are owned by individual owners, but they're still kind of rented out to tourists as tourist accommodation via a hotel style system. For the most part, some don't operate completely like that, but anyway, with those situations, you don't generally get to, you may not be able to alter the flooring, the walls, things like that without approval of the council or strata corporation, and that's due to just uniformity, keeping it most like a hotel where all units are the same, so they can be interchanged as far as guests and bookings and things like that. So even your townhomes, though, I manage a property where you got to get the flooring approved, and that's because poor installation of flooring can produce noise to the townhome beside you on either side, which again is the reason that there's some controls to protect the property values of all owners, the best interest of all owners. Again, like I go back to. So what strata cannot control? Category 2. So generally, strata is not going to control your furniture, your decor, what you cook, or how you live your day-to-day life within your unit. But there are some examples of where some of those things may change. Furniture and decor, I manage a property where it's a strata corporation. It's also an HOA, or a homeowners association. The homeowners association basically controls everything within the unit, and the strata corporation controls everything without or on the outside of the unit. So there's very little that the owners really control in that situation. But the benefit of that is that there's a rental manager that handles everything for them, and they get to use the units for a certain period of time. Otherwise, they're renting them out and making some kind of revenue off of them. So again, going back to what strata cannot control, it's your furniture, decor, what you cook, how you lived your day-to-day life. But this all goes back to as long as it does not violate the bylaws. If it violates the bylaws, then the strata corporation, strata council may get involved. A big example of this, so yeah, we're not going to control, or the strata corporation is not going to control, council is not going to control what you cook. But if cooking smells are extreme, then there might be some issues there, and I've certainly dealt with that myself or heard stories or examples of it. What you watch definitely can be controlled. How you decorate and how you use your space, obviously, as long as your space is not being used too loudly or causing thuds, vibrations, things like that. So once it impacts other residents, then that's when strata corporation could get involved, because again, you have to protect the interests of all owners. All owners have a right to peaceful enjoyment of their strata lot. And if you are doing something that is infringing on that right of peaceful enjoyment, then the strata corporation, strata council has a duty to do something about it if they have the authority and the bylaws in place to do so. So where things get confusing, this would be category 3. This is where most disputes happen. Balconies is a good one. So owners assume this is your property, which it very much so realistically is, but a lot of properties are designated as limited common property. I'm trying to remember the exact definition of this. I'll probably pop it up on the screen. Yeah, I can't remember the exact definition off the top of my head. But basically, it limited common property. It's property that is for the exclusive use of one strata lot. But it's still common property, which means the strata has the duty to maintain and repair it outside of regular wear and tear situations. And again, I'll kind of pop up the screen to better explain that one, because it's not coming to me as much as I wanted it to right now. But generally for your balconies, strata can control what can be stored on them, and then what types of barbecues can be stored, maybe what times the barbecues can be used, although that one's going to be a little bit more brutal and more of a common sense one. But at the end of the day, as long as you're not bothering anyone, you can cook on your barbecue at 2 a.m. for all I know. And then decorations outside might be controlled, so you can't just have like Christmas lights hanging on your patio all year round. And then a lot of the times you can't like hang things over because there's a liability of it falling off and then landing on the ground. And then there's maybe someone gets hurt from it, and then there's kind of claims and issues and all sorts of things can happen. And then the flooring of the outside, so generally that might be controlled by the Strata Corporation, and that's to protect the building and the building envelope in general. So renovations, we're getting back to it. This one's the big one. So you generally, to do anything in a strata lot, your bylaws are going to stipulate what's required. So certainly review those. Go, if you don't have a copy of your bylaws on your computer, go grab them from either the website that your Strata Corporation has set up for it, through the Strata Management Company, or just ask your strata manager, your council members for the bylaws. And this is going to really, because generally there's a section for obtain approval before altering a strata lot, and that's going to be where you're going to want to look to figure out what requirements, or what requires strata council approval before you can proceed. And again, this is to protect the building and the interest of all owners. Noise. So as we said, noise, late night parties, loud music, construction, that can become a problem for sure. When it starts to affect other owners is when the Strata Corporation may get involved. These rules exist, as I mentioned before, to protect property values, to ensure safety of all owners and occupants, inhabitants, tenants, protect the shared infrastructure like all the wiring, plumbing, elevator, hallways, lighting, stuff like that, insurance coverage. So again, going back to what I said, so if there's claims, then insurance premium is going to go up most likely, which means strata fees are going to go up. So you're trying to avoid that, of course. So that's why people need to get approval before moving forward with something, and that's why those rules are in place to protect everyone. And then neighborhood relationships, or neighbor relationships. This is a big thing that these rules or bylaws are in place for. If you're bothering your neighbors with the noise or smells all the time, then it's going to be brutal. So these kind of protect everyone. So again, going back to that peaceful, or right to peaceful enjoyment of your strata property or your strata lot, that's the whole point. The whole point is to make sure and ensure that that right is not infringed upon. So advice for owners. Before you do something to your strata lot, check your bylaws. If you have any questions, if they're still not clear about things, contact your strata manager. And then generally there's going to be some kind of alteration request form or something like that. At my company, it's an alteration agreement, but it's an alteration and indemnity agreement, so it protects the Strata Corporation from any issues that may result from the work that you've done. So you might have to submit something like that, and then just please avoid assuming that you can do something. Check your bylaws, and again, if you're not clear something, ask your strata manager or pop a question in the comments. I will try to help you out if I can. But again, generally, strata corporations are certainly not all the same. Councils and owners might have gone wild with the bylaws, so they could be very different to what the standard set of bylaws are. So there's no guarantee that I can figure it out. But if you can provide me a set of your bylaws, then I certainly can. So again, comment, and then maybe we can get in touch and I can help you out. But your strata manager should be able to help you out for those general questions. But again, if you don't think that they're providing correct information, let me know. Pop it in the comments. We'll talk about it. Maybe I'll make a video about it. Advice for councils: enforce your bylaws consistently, avoid overreach, and communicate clearly. Remember, owners live there too, so some council members can certainly get a little power hung. I don't know what the word is, but at the end of the day, we're all neighbors, so just try to be fair and reasonable. Strata management should keep that in control as well. That goes back to enforcing the bylaws consistently. Don't just do it to the people you don't like, but do it to everyone if the bylaws are being breached, because then again, you're protecting the rights of all owners, and you're ensuring that the owner's right to peaceful enjoyment is not infringed upon. Good counsel focuses on reasonable enforcement, not control. In closing, Strata isn't about controlling people. It's about managing shared property and shared responsibility. When that balance works properly, Strata living works well, but I'll certainly say Strata living is not always fair. So keep that in mind. Pop these in the comments, please, if you want any answers. But what rule in your Strata do you find the most frustrating? Any questions? Anything you want to ask me about? Definitely do that about that rule. Or have you ever had a dispute with your Strata council? Let me know. I'd love to hear about it. And again, if there's any questions or if you think you weren't actually treated fairly, explain that to me, and I'd love to hear about it, and maybe I can help you out. So again, thanks for watching and supporting the channel, The Burnt Canadian. I am The Burnt Canadian, and please like and subscribe. If you have any questions or topics you'd like covered in a future episode, please comment below, and see you next time. Have a great day.